The Alpha King descended into the dungeon, expecting to pass judgment. Chains clinked. A woman knelt in the dark, silent, bleeding, and broken. And in that moment, he realized this punishment was never his order. Damian walks ancient stone steps into depths he's never visited, past cells for common criminals to a forbidden section. The air tastes wrong, metallic, thick. Council reports claimed an Omega was spreading rebellion, poisoning young wolves, threatening the northern territories. They demanded swift execution. But as Damian descends deeper, his wolf paces restlessly. Something is wrong. The dungeon master leads him to an iron door covered in glowing runes. Inside, Marin, kneeling in silver chains that burn her skin, covered in ritual scars and curse marks. She's been here 7 months, starved, tortured, hollowed out. When she raises her head, her eyes are silver like trapped moonlight. She thinks he's come to kill her, but when Damian touches her and sees the truth, through their connection, she's a scapegoat, a living sacrifice, systematically tortured while he was away. Everything changes. This isn't containment, this is treason, and his own council has been playing him. The torches in the forgotten wing of the palace dungeon had long since burned out, leaving only darkness thick enough to choke on. Damian shouldn't have been here. The head of security had explicit orders to stay clear of the restricted cells, orders that came directly from the council with wax seals and veiled threats. But rumors had a way of spreading through castle walls, whispered by servants who saw too much and guards who drank too heavily. A prisoner, kept in isolation, 7 months and counting. Something about it gnawed at him until he had to know. The lock gave way to his master key with a click that sounded obscenely loud in the suffocating silence. The door groaned open and the smell hit him first. Blood and infection and despair made physical. He raised his lantern with a hand that wanted to shake. The woman hung in chains that looked older than the kingdom itself, suspended in a position designed for maximum agony. Her body was a canvas of torture, scars layered upon scars, burns that had healed wrong, fingernails torn away and slowly growing back. Dark hair hung in matted curtains around a face that might have been beautiful before pain had hollowed it to bone and shadow. But her eyes, gods, her eyes were still alive, silver like moonlight on water, and when they fixed on him, he felt the impact like a physical blow. "Come to finish it?" Her voice was rusted metal scraping stone. "Finally? I'm not..." And Damian stepped forward, and years of security training warred with something far more primal. "Who did this to you?" A laugh, bitter and broken. "Who didn't? Your precious council. 5 of them, taking turns. 7 months they've kept me here." She lifted her head with visible effort. "But you already knew that, didn't you? You all did." "I didn't. I swear to you, I didn't know." He was moving before conscious thought, reaching for her chains. The moment his skin touched hers, the world exploded. Vision, memory, truth flooding through a connection he couldn't explain. He saw her in a throne room, younger, whole, standing trial before the council, saw them pronounce her guilty of treason she hadn't committed, saw the chief mage draw 12 cursed symbols on her skin while she screamed, binding dark magic to her flesh. A vessel. They'd made her a vessel for curses meant to destroy the kingdom's enemies, but the power had to come from somewhere, from her. They were siphoning her life force slowly to fuel their war magic. Marin. Her name came from the vision, sharp and clear. "You're Marin Ashwood, the king's former advisor." "Was." She sagged in her chains. "Now I'm just a battery they're draining dry. When I finally die, they'll find another. There's always another." Rage ignited in Damian's chest, white-hot and righteous. 5 council members. He knew which ones, could guess from the vision fragments, from the schedules that never quite added up, from late-night visits to restricted wings that he'd been ordered not to question. "I'm getting you out of here. You can't." But hope flickered in those silver eyes despite her words. "They'll know. They always know when someone tampers with the chains. The magic alerts them. Then we don't tamper. We plan." He knelt beside her so they were eye level. Midnight. The guard shift changes, and there's a 3-minute window when the corridor's empty. "I can disable the alert spell if I have time to work. Can you walk?" After 7 months in chains, she smiled, and it was terrible and beautiful. "I'll crawl if I have to." "You won't have to." Damian pulled a small vial from his pocket. Healing tonic, military grade. "Drink this. It'll help with the pain. Start closing some of the wounds. I need you functional." She drank, with shaking hands, and color began returning to her gray-tinged skin almost immediately. Not enough to heal 7 months of torture, but enough to give her a chance. "Why?" Marin asked, searching his face. "Why risk this for me? You don't even know me." Damian thought about all the things he could say. About justice, about duty, about the wrongness that had been eating at him since he'd taken this position and started seeing the cracks in the perfect facade. Instead, he told the truth. "Because when I touched you, I saw what they did. And if I walk away now, I'm complicit." He stood, memorizing her face, the placement of her chains, the dimensions of the cell. "Midnight. 3 minutes. Be ready." "I'll be ready." Her voice was stronger now, resolve hardening into steel. "But Damian, when we run, they'll come after us, all of them, and they won't stop until we're both dead or back in chains." "I know." He met her silver eyes with his own dark ones. "We run anyway." The door closed behind him with a finality that sounded like a promise. Midnight, 3 minutes, one chance to pull off the impossible. He'd spent his whole life following orders, maintaining security, keeping the kingdom's secrets. Tonight, he'd break every rule that mattered, for a woman he'd just met, but somehow already knew he couldn't abandon. Midnight arrived with the weight of inevitability. Damian moved through the darkened corridors with 3 others at his back. Belle, whose healing magic had saved more lives than the council cared to count. Ronan, a tracker who'd questioned orders once too often and learned to keep his doubts silent. And Kian, a scholar whose research into forbidden magic had earned him a polite exile to the archives. All of them had seen the cracks. All of them had chosen tonight to stop pretending they didn't exist. The guard shift changed with military precision. 3 minutes. The clock started now. Damian's fingers worked the alert spell with practiced efficiency, unraveling threads of magic that would have screamed warning to the council. Belle stood ready with suppression charms. Ronan and Kian flanked the door, weapons drawn, knowing that if anything went wrong, they were all dead. The cell door opened. Marin looked up, silver eyes fierce despite 7 months of hell, and nodded once. "This is going to hurt," Damian warned, approaching the chains. "Everything hurts." She braced herself. "Do it." The first chain broke with a sound like breaking bone, and Marin's scream tore through the dungeon. The curses etched into her skin ignited. 12 symbols blazing with malevolent light, reacting violently to their sudden freedom. Blood vessels burst across her arms where the magic had been bound too long. Her back arched, body convulsing as 7 months of contained power tried to surge through pathways that had atrophied from disuse. Belle's hands glowed as she worked to stabilize the surge, but it was like trying to dam a river with bare hands. "The curses are destabilizing. They were never meant to be removed this way." "Then we work faster." Damian broke the second chain, caught Marin as she collapsed, her weight almost nothing in his arms. She was burning up, skin hot enough to sear, the curse marks writhing across her flesh like living things trying to burrow deeper. "Go, go, go," Ronan hissed from the doorway. "I hear movement above." They ran. Damian carried Marin through the catacombs beneath the palace, following paths he'd memorized from ancient maps the council thought they'd destroyed. Behind them, alarms began to wail, not the chain alerts they'd disabled, but something worse. Blood magic. The council had tied Marin's very existence to warning spells, and her absence was a wound in their carefully constructed web of power. "They know," Kian panted, keeping pace. "They know she's gone." "They knew the moment we broke the chains," Damian said grimly. "Doesn't matter. We don't stop." The northern forest swallowed them as dawn broke, and the ruined safe house materialized from morning mist like salvation itself. Once a hunter's lodge, now just stone walls and a roof that mostly held, but it was remote, warded with Belle's defensive magic. And most importantly, it was theirs. Damian laid Marin on the makeshift bed they'd prepared, and only then did his arms start shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. She was unconscious, breathing shallow, the curse marks still glowing faintly beneath skin that looked too pale, too fragile. Kian approached with his scholar's kit, magical lenses and diagnostic tools spread across the rough wooden table. "I need to examine the marks, understand what we're dealing with." "Be careful," Belle warned. "That magic is old, vicious." Kian worked in silence for long minutes, his expression growing darker with each passing moment. Finally, he sat back, and the horror in his eyes made Damian's stomach drop. "Tell me," Damian demanded. 12 curse matrices woven directly into her flesh and soul. Kian's voice was hollow. But that's not the worst part. Look at the pattern. These aren't containment curses. They're conversion matrices. Conversion? Ronan moved closer. Converting what? Her. Kian pointed to symbols that pulsed with stolen light. The council wasn't just containing curses. They were feeding her pain, her life force, her very essence into these matrices and harvesting the transformed power. Every moment of torture, every drop of blood, every scream, it all became magical energy they could use. Belle's hand flew to her mouth. That's soul magic. That's forbidden even in the darkest texts. They've been doing it for 7 months, Kian continued, his scholar's detachment cracking to reveal raw fury. And based on the secondary patterns here, he traced a symbol that made everyone in the room flinch. She's not the first. There are connection threads to at least 3 other matrices, other vessels, other people they've used this way. Damian looked down at Marin's unconscious form, at the 12 glowing marks that had turned her into a living battery for the council's ambitions, and felt something cold and final settle in his chest. They're going to come for her, he said quietly, with everything they have, because she's not just a witness to their crimes, she's evidence, walking, breathing proof of what they've done. Then we make sure they don't get her, Belle said, already preparing healing tonics. Whatever it takes. Ronan checked his weapons. Kian returned to studying the curse marks, searching for weaknesses. And Damian sat beside Marin, keeping watch over a woman he barely knew but had already decided was worth burning his entire life down to protect. Outside, the forest whispered with approaching danger. The council was coming, and the real fight was just beginning. Marin woke screaming 3 days later, power detonating from her body and concentric waves that shattered every window in the safe house and sent Damian flying backward into the wall. The curse marks blazed like brands, and through the connection they'd forged in that dungeon cell, he felt her agony as if it were his own. Fire and ice and something far worse. A tearing sensation like her very soul was being ripped apart from the inside. "Get back!" Belle shouted, throwing up a hasty barrier. "The curses are destabilizing again!" But Marin was already moving, stumbling toward the door with wild, unfocused eyes. Can't contain it. Too much. Need space. She ran. Damian was after her in an instant, ignoring Belle's protests and Ronan's warnings. He tracked her through the forest by the trail of scorched earth and withered plants, following destruction until he found her, collapsed in a clearing he'd never seen before, despite mapping these woods for years. No, not a clearing, a temple. Ancient stone pillars rose from earth that hummed with power old enough to make his wolf instincts scream both reverence and terror. At the center stood an altar carved from moon-white stone, covered in symbols that predated any language Damian recognized, and Marin lay before it, chest heaving, the curse marks still glowing but somehow quieter here. "Marin," he approached cautiously, hands raised. "Let me help you back." "No." She pushed herself up on shaking arms. "This place, I can feel it. It's..." Her silver eyes went wide. "It's calling to me." The altar pulsed with light as she crawled toward it, and the moment her hand touched the stone, the entire clearing erupted in luminescence. The curse marks on her skin began moving, shifting, rearranging themselves into patterns that made Damian's eyes water to look at directly. And from the altar itself, forms began to coalesce, translucent, shimmering, ancient beyond measure. Spirits, moon spirits, if the stories his grandmother had told him held any truth. 3 of them, materialized fully, their faces simultaneously young and impossibly old, wearing expressions of grief and recognition as they gazed down at Marin. "Moon-marked," the first spirit spoke, her voice like wind through silver bells. "Daughter of transformation, we felt your suffering even in the spaces between worlds." "What?" Marin's voice broke. "What am I?" The second spirit knelt, reaching out to touch one of the glowing curse marks with fingers that passed through physical flesh but connected to something deeper. "You are a vessel, child, but not as those corrupt fools made you. You were born moon-marked, blessed by the First Mother, to channel transformative magic. Power is meant to flow through you, like water through stone, changing all it touches, but never destroying the channel itself. The council twisted your gift," the third spirit continued, anger crackling through her ethereal form. They recognized what you were and perverted it, trapped curses inside you that should have passed through and dissipated, dammed the river and wondered why the dam began to crack. Damian moved closer, placing himself between Marin and the spirits on pure instinct. Can you help her? Can you remove the curses? All three spirits turned to him, and their combined gaze was like standing before an avalanche. The head of security, who broke his oaths to save a stranger. The wolf, who heard the moon's whisper in a dungeon cell. The first spirit smiled, sad and knowing. You are bound to her now, whether you understand it or not. Your choice to rescue her tied your fates together. I don't care about fate, his voice came out rough. I care about keeping her alive. Then hear us well. The second spirit stood, and the clearing itself seemed to lean in to listen. The curses cannot be removed without killing her. They've woven too deeply into her essence. But they can be transformed, released as they were meant to be, flowing through her gift instead of festering within it. The temple of the first moon is sacred ground, the third spirit gestured to the ancient stones around them. Here, the barriers between transformation and stagnation are thin. If she can learn to embrace her nature, to stop fighting the power, and instead guide it, the curses will flow through me, Marin finished, understanding dawning in her silver eyes. Transform and dissipate. But I have to do it willingly, have to open myself to the very power that's been destroying me. Yes, all three spirits spoke as one. And it will be agony beyond what you've already endured. The council's binding forced the power inward. Releasing it will tear open every wound they inflicted, spiritual and physical. Many vessels have died attempting this transformation. Marin looked down at her scarred hands, at the curse marks still glowing against her skin, and Damian felt her terror and determination warring through their connection. She was so young, mid-20s at most, and had already suffered more than most people endured in lifetimes. If I do this, she asked quietly, if I survive it, will I be free? The spirits exchanged glances that held millennia of sorrow. You will never be entirely free, moon-marked child. Your gift will always call to cursed magic, will always mark you as a vessel. But you will be yourself again, sovereign over your own power, able to choose when and how you channel, rather than being used as a battery for others' ambitions. And the council, they'll still come for me. Oh yes, the first spirit's smile turned sharp. They invested 7 months harvesting your power. They will not give up such a valuable resource easily. Damian stepped forward, drawing Marin's attention to him. Through their connection, he pushed every ounce of certainty he possessed. Then we make you strong enough that they can't take you. Whatever this transformation requires, whatever the cost, you don't face it alone. Marin searched his face, silver eyes looking for doubt and finding none. Finally, she turned back to the spirits. Teach me, show me how to reclaim what they twisted. The moon spirit's expressions shifted to something like pride. The transformation will take days, perhaps weeks. And you, they looked at Damian, will have to anchor her. Keep her tethered to this world when the pain tries to pull her into dissolution. Can you bear that burden, Wolf? To share her agony, to hold her through transformation that might destroy you both? Damian thought about walking away, about the safe, comfortable life he'd had before entering that dungeon cell, about all the logical reasons to let someone else deal with this impossible situation. Then he looked at Marin, broken, powerful, terrified, and determined, and knew there was only one answer he could give. Yes, he said, whatever it takes. The spirits nodded, and the temple's ancient magic rose around them like a silver tide. The transformation was about to begin. The moon spirits drew a circle of silver light around the altar, ancient symbols burning themselves into stone and earth. We will guide the transformation, the first spirit intoned, but you must walk the path yourself, moon-marked. Each curse will tear free, and the pain. I know, Marin's voice was steady despite the tremor in her hands. I'm ready. You need an anchor, the second spirit interrupted, her translucent form pulsing with urgency. The curses will try to take you with them when they leave. Without someone to tether you to this world, you'll dissolve into the spaces between. Damian stepped forward before anyone else could speak. Use me. It will forge a mate bond, the third spirit warned, not the gentle kind that grows over years, but instantaneous, brutal, binding your souls together through shared agony. If she dies during the transformation, you die with her. Are you certain? He met Marin's silver eyes across the ritual circle, and the connection they'd formed in that dungeon cell sang between them like recognition. I'm certain. The spirits moved with purpose, drawing symbols on both their bodies with moonlight that burned cold. When they pressed Damian's palm to Marin's over the altar, power snapped into place with the finality of a lock turning. The mate bond ignited. Damian gasped as Marin's essence flooded into him. All her pain, her fear, her fierce determination, the 7 months of torture compressed into a single overwhelming moment, and she felt him in return. His steady strength, his protective fury, his absolute refusal to let her face this alone. Begin, the first spirit commanded. The first curse tore free like a fishhook ripping through flesh, and Marin screamed. Damian felt it through the bond, felt the curse's malevolent intelligence trying to cling to her soul as it was forcibly expelled. He held tighter, his wolf surging forward to lend her his strength. The second curse, the third. Each one worse than the last, each one leaving spiritual wounds that bled light instead of Biyo's blood. That's when the council attacked. They came through the forest with military precision, 50 wolves in combat formation, led by council member Thorn himself. Kill the traitors, recapture the vessel. Bell, Ronan, and Kiana met them at the circle's edge, 3 against 50, buying time with desperate courage. Magic crackled, blades sang, blood painted the sacred ground. The 5th curse tore free, the 6th. Marin was convulsing, barely conscious, and only Damian's grip kept her from collapsing. Hold the line! Ronan roared, his sword flashing as 3 wolves descended on him. The 8th curse, the 9th. Damian's vision was going white from shared pain, his wolf howling inside as the mate bond transmitted every ounce of Marin's suffering. Then the 10th curse activated, and everything went wrong. It didn't tear free like the others. Instead, it pulsed once, twice, and Damian felt something cold and vicious bloom in his own chest. Through the mate bond, he suddenly understood. This curse hadn't been placed in Marin. It had been placed in him. Months ago, years maybe, dormant, waiting. The head of security, compromised from within, Thorn's voice cut through the chaos, triumphant and cruel. Did you think we didn't plan for betrayal, Damian? That poison in your blood was insurance, and now that you've bonded with her, the curse activated fully, and Damian's body locked as dark magic seized control. His hands, still pressed to Marin's, began to squeeze, to crush, to kill. No! The word tore from him, but his body wouldn't obey. Through the bond, he felt Marin's confusion, her terror, and then her terrible understanding. Damian, fight it! Bell screamed, trying to reach them through the melee. But the 10th curse was designed for this exact purpose, to turn Anchor into executioner, to make him destroy the very person he'd sworn to save. And with 2 curses still remaining, Marin was too weak to survive if he let go now. Damian's hands were crushing Marin's throat, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The 10th curse puppeteered his body with malicious precision, turning his strength, the very thing that was supposed to protect her, into the weapon that would kill her. Through the mate bond, he felt her heartbeat faltering, felt her acceptance, felt her preparing to die so he wouldn't have to live with her blood on his hands. No, he snarled internally, warring with the dark magic. You don't get to give up, not after everything. Marin's silver eyes locked with his, and somehow, impossibly, she smiled. Then her hand moved, not to pry his fingers away, but to press harder against his palm, where they touched over the altar. Power surged backward through the bond. She wasn't fighting him. She was pulling the curse out of him the same way the ritual had pulled curses from her, taking the poison into herself, adding it to the burden she already carried. Don't! Damian tried to stop her, but the curse was already flowing into Marin, drawn by her moon-marked nature like iron to a lodestone. The 11th curse tore free with a sound like reality breaking. Damian's body was his own again. He caught Marin as she collapsed, her skin burning with fever, the curse marks blazing so bright they left after-images. Around them, the battle raged. Kian had fallen, Bell was bleeding from a dozen wounds. Ronan fought with the desperation of the last stand. One more, the moon spirits whispered. Only one remains. But Marin wasn't moving. Her breathing was shallow, erratic. Through the bond, Damian felt her consciousness fragmenting, reality and memory bleeding together. And then he saw what the spirits meant. The 12th curse wasn't like the others. It hadn't been placed by the council at all. It was older, deeper, self-inflicted in a moment of terror and shame. He saw the memory, through their connection, Marin at 17, her first shift into wolf form, power erupting uncontrolled and destroying everything within 50 yards. Her family's cottage in ruins, her mother injured, and young Marin, horrified by what she'd done, making a choice that would haunt her for years. She'd cursed herself, locked away her power, bound her true nature, because she was terrified of the destruction she could cause. The council hadn't created a vessel. They'd found one who had already imprisoned her own gift and exploited the cage she'd built. Marin, Damian pulled her closer, pouring everything he had through the mate bond. You have to let it go. The fear, the shame, all of it. You have to accept what you are. Can't. Her voice was barely a whisper. Too dangerous. I'll hurt everyone. You'll save everyone, he corrected fiercely. Look at what the council has done. Look at the other vessels they'll create if we don't stop them. You're not dangerous. You're powerful. There's a difference. Around them, the battle was turning. Thorn had broken through the defensive line, was striding toward the ritual circle with dark magic crackling around his hands. Enough of this. I'll harvest the power myself, even if it kills her in the process. Bell tried to intercept and went down hard. Ronan's sword shattered against Thorn's shields. Kian didn't move at all. They were out of time. Damian cupped Marin's face, forcing her to focus on him instead of the approaching death. You are moon-marked, a vessel of transformation, and right now there are moon-marked children all over this kingdom who will suffer the same fate as you if we don't end this. You want to protect them? Then stop protecting everyone from yourself and be what you were always meant to be. Through the bond, he showed her his certainty, his faith, his absolute conviction that she was not a monster to be contained, but a force of nature that needed to be free. Marin's eyes cleared, focused, and in them, Damian saw the moment she made her choice. Not safety, not control, but purpose. She stood, Damian rising with her, their hands still joined over the altar. The 12th curse mark, the one wrapped around her heart, began to glow. I am moon-marked, Marin said, her voice gaining strength with each word. I am a vessel of transformation, and I will not be used, not by the council, not by my own fear. She looked directly at Thorn, who had frozen at the edge of the circle, recognition dawning in his eyes. Never again. The final curse exploded outward, but it didn't tear free like the others. It transformed. Marin's body erupted with silver light, and she shifted, not into a normal wolf, but into something the moon spirits themselves seemed to bow before. A moon wolf. Larger than any natural wolf, fur that shimmered like starlight, eyes that burned with the power of the first mother herself. She threw back her head and howled. The sound shattered reality. Every piece of dark magic the council had woven across the territory, every curse, every binding, every stolen scrap of power, detonated simultaneously. Thorn screamed as the magic he'd been channeling turned against him, consuming him from the inside. The attacking wolves collapsed, the compulsion spells that had driven them breaking all at once. And across the kingdom, in dungeons and hidden rooms and forgotten cells, other vessels felt their chains dissolve. Marin's howl carried freedom on silver wings. When the light finally faded, she stood in human form again, naked and unmarked, the curse scars gone, burned away in transformation. She swayed, and Damian caught her, the mate bond singing between them with recognition and relief and something deeper. The moon spirit smiled. Welcome home, daughter of transformation. The first mother is well pleased. Then they faded, their purpose fulfilled, leaving only the aftermath of battle and the dawning realization of what they'd accomplished. Bell limped over, bleeding but alive. Ronan helped Kian to his feet. Around them, the attacking wolves were waking as if from nightmares, confused and ashamed. And in the distance, alarms began ringing across the kingdom as the council's carefully constructed web of dark magic collapsed entirely, exposing every secret, every crime, every vessel they'd used and discarded. Marin looked up at Damian, silver eyes clear and free for the first time in years. What happens now? He pulled her closer, the mate bond warm and right between them. Now, we make sure no one ever uses moon-marked children as weapons again. We tear down the council's lies and build something better in the ruins. She smiled, tentative but genuine. That sounds like a war. Probably. He smiled back. Good thing you're a force of nature now. Her laugh was bright and unexpected, and as the sun rose over the temple of the first moon, Damian held his mate and thought about all the impossible things they'd accomplished in a single night. Breaking chains, forging bonds, transforming curses into freedom. And this, he knew, was only the beginning. The capital was in chaos. 3 days after the temple transformation, with 5 council members bound in silver chains and evidence of their crimes spreading like wildfire, the pack gathered in unprecedented numbers. The great hall could barely contain them, hundreds of wolves pressing in, their collective fury and confusion a palpable weight in the air. Damian stood at the front, feeling every eye on him like a physical touch. As head of security, he had commanded respect through competence and strategic brilliance. But now, with the mate bond mark visible on his neck and a moon-marked woman at his side, that respect had curdled into suspicion. "This is madness," Valon's voice cut through the murmur, and the crowd parted for Damian's uncle like water around a stone. The old wolf had always been a force. In pack politics, his traditional views carrying weight among the older generation. "My nephew stands before us, marked by a creature we don't understand, defending criminals who've destabilized our entire kingdom." "They're not the criminals," Belle interjected from her position near the prisoners. Her healing magic had saved Kian's life, but she looked exhausted, barely standing. "The council is, we have proof. Proof provided by the very woman who bewitched our head of security." Valon's smile was cold. How convenient. Damian enters a forbidden cell on her behalf, breaks every oath he's sworn, and emerges claiming the council, our leaders for decades, are the true villains. And we're supposed to believe this isn't manipulation, moon magic twisting his mind? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Damian felt Marin tense beside him, felt her impulse to defend him through the bond. "Let me face them," she said quietly, for his ears alone. "This is my fight too. They'll tear you apart." Maybe. Her silver eyes met his, steady and certain. "But they deserve to hear the truth from me, not filtered through your voice or anyone else's." He wanted to refuse. Every protective instinct screamed against putting her in the center of this hostile crowd. But through the bond, he felt her determination, and her understanding that hiding behind him would only confirm Valon's accusations. "All right," he said finally, "but I'm staying beside you. I wouldn't have it any other way." They stepped forward together, and the hall fell silent. Marin stood before hundreds of wolves who'd been taught to see moon-marked individuals as tools at best, threats at worst. She wore simple clothes borrowed from Belle, no armor, no weapons, just herself and the silver light that seemed to emanate from her skin in the presence of so many supernatural beings. "My name is Marin Ashwood," she began, her voice carrying clearly despite her obvious nerves. "I was the king's advisor before the council accused me of treason I didn't commit. They sentenced me to 7 months of torture, using my moon-marked nature to harvest power for their war magic. I know many of you don't understand what that means. I didn't either, until recently." "We understand enough," Valon interrupted, moving to position himself opposite her, across the hall's center. The symbolism was clear. Him as defender of pack values, her as the outsider threatening everything they knew. Moon-marked means cursed, dangerous, a vessel that attracts dark magic like rot attracts flies. Moon-marked means transformed, Marin corrected, and Damian felt her drawing on the confidence she'd found at the temple. "The council told you I was a threat because it benefited them to have a convenient source of power, but the truth, Valon spoke over her, addressing the crowd now instead of Marin directly, is that this woman has corrupted our head of security, forced a mate bond on him to gain protection and legitimacy. Look at him. Damian, who never showed interest in bonding, suddenly marked by a prisoner he was supposed to guard. That's not love. That's manipulation." The crowd's energy shifted, hostile eyes turning toward Damian. He felt their doubt, their anger, their fear that everything they'd built was crumbling. "Uncle," he started. "I challenge your authority," Valon declared, and the hall erupted. It was the formal phrase, the one that couldn't be taken back. "You are compromised, bewitched, unfit to lead our security forces. I claim the right to lead in your place, and my first act will be to remove this creature from our territory and restore order to the council's investigation." Damian's wolf surged forward, ready to meet the challenge with violence. But Marin's hand on his arm stopped him. "No," she said quietly, "this isn't about dominance. It's about truth." She raised her voice to address the crowd. You want proof? Then let me show you what the council did. Not just to me, to all of us. She closed her eyes, and the mate bond flared between them. Through it, Damian felt her reaching for something deeper, the moon-marked gift that had been locked away for so long. When she opened her eyes again, they glowed with silver light. The temple of the first moon granted me something when I transformed, she said. The ability to share memories, to show rather than tell. If you'll allow it, I can prove everything. Valon's expression flickered with something that might have been fear. More moon magic, more manipulation. Then you have nothing to fear, Marin challenged. If I'm lying, the memories will show it. If I'm manipulating Damian, you'll see the deception. Let me prove myself, or admit you'd rather maintain comfortable lies than face uncomfortable truths. The crowd was wavering now, caught between Valon's traditional authority and Marin's direct challenge. I'll volunteer, Kian said, stepping forward despite his injuries. Show me the memories. I'll tell the pack what I see. As will I, Bell added. And I, Ronan's voice carried from the back. One by one, wolves stepped forward. Not many, but enough. Enough to tip the balance. Valon's face darkened with rage, but he was trapped into by his own rhetoric. If he refused now, he'd look like he was hiding something. Fine, he bit out. Show us your truth, moon-marked, and when it's revealed as the fantasy it is, you'll face pack justice for your deceptions. Marin nodded once, then extended her hands. Then let me show you what they did to all of us, and you decide who the real monsters are. The memory sharing lasted 3 hours, and by the end, half the Great Hall was in tears. They'd seen Marin's torture, felt the curses being carved into her flesh, witnessed the council's systematic harvesting of power from helpless vessels. Bell vomited halfway through. Kian had to be restrained from attacking the bound council. Members, even some of Valon's supporters, looked shaken, but not all of them. Compelling performance, Stellan emerged from the crowd, a younger wolf, ambitious and hungry. One of Valon's most vocal supporters. Memory magic can be manipulated, edited. How do we know this isn't just elaborate fiction designed to justify your hold on the head of security? The moon spirits verified, Marin started. Moon spirits that only you can see and communicate with? Stellan's smile was sharp. How convenient. No, if you want to prove you're not dangerous, prove you can control that power. Fight me, here, now, without moon magic. Damian moved to intercept, but Marin caught his arm. Through the bond, he felt her resignation. They'll never believe me otherwise. You know that. It's a trap. Everything is a trap. She smiled sadly. But I have to try. The crowd formed a circle, hungry for violence after hours of uncomfortable truth. Stellan stripped to fighting form, all predatory, grace and confidence. Marin faced him in borrowed clothes that hung loose on her still-recovering frame, and Damian's wolf howled with the wrongness of it. No moon magic, Stellan repeated. Just skill, just control. Show us you're not the monster they made you. They circled. Stellan struck first, fast, brutal, going for the throat. Marin dodged, barely, her movement still sluggish from weeks of torture. She countered with a strike to his ribs that he absorbed without flinching. The fight was vicious and one-sided. Stellan had trained his entire life for combat. Marin had spent 7 months in chains. She was skilled enough to avoid being killed immediately, but that was all. Then Stellan's hand moved in a pattern Damian recognized, an illegal binding hex, the kind that paralyzed an opponent's nervous system. Stellan, no! Bell shouted. Too late. The hex hit Marin mid-dodge and she went down hard. Stellan was on her instantly, pinning her to the floor with a knee on. Her spine, his hand around her throat. The crowd cheered. Not all of them. Kian, Bell, and Ronan were shouting protests. But enough? Enough wolves celebrating her defeat, vindicated in their belief that she was weak, that she needed to be controlled, that Damian had been foolish to defend her. Through the bond, Damian felt Marin's heart breaking. She'd shown them everything, shared her pain, her truth, her vulnerability, and they still saw her as the enemy. Yield, Stellan hissed in her ear, loud enough for the crowd to hear. Admit you're dangerous, that you manipulated Damian, that you deserve to be locked away for everyone's safety. Damian was already moving, ready to tear Stellan apart for cheating, but Marin's voice stopped him. No. The word wasn't loud, but it carried absolute finality. Silver light exploded from Marin's body. The binding hex shattered. Stellan went flying backward, hitting the far wall hard enough to crack stone. And Marin rose, moon power, blazing around her like a corona, her eyes burning with the light of the First Mother. "You want to see dangerous?" Her voice resonated with supernatural authority. "I'll show you dangerous." She didn't attack Stellan, didn't hurt anyone, but the raw power radiating from her made every wolf in the hall take an involuntary step back, instincts screaming that they were in the presence of something primal and vast. "This is what I am," Marin said, turning slowly to address the entire crowd. "Moon-marked, vessel of transformation. The council tried to use me. Stellan tried to dominate me. You want me to prove I'm not dangerous? I can't, because I am dangerous to anyone who tries to cage me, control me, or use me as a weapon." "You see?" Valon's voice cut through the stunned silence. "She admits it, admits she's a threat." "I'm only a threat to people like you," Marin countered, fixing her glowing gaze on Damian's uncle. "People who want power without accountability, who see others as tools, who—" Valon moved with shocking speed for his age. Dark magic already formed in his hands, the same corrupt power the council had used. He struck before anyone could react, and the spell hit Marin square in the chest. She screamed. Through the bond, Damian felt it, not just pain, but dissolution. Valon's magic wasn't meant to kill quickly. It was designed to unmake her, slowly tearing apart the essence of what made her moon-marked. "Uncle, stop!" Damian was across the hall in seconds, but Valon redirected his magic, and invisible force slammed Damian into the ground. "She's poisoned you," Valon snarled, pouring more power into the spell, destroying Marin. "Made you weak, made you betray everything we stand for. But I can fix this. I can save you." By killing her? Damian struggled against the binding, feeling Marin's agony through the mate bond like his own flesh was being flayed. "That's not saving me. That's murdering my mate." "She's not your mate," Valon roared. "She's a curse, a corruption, and I will cut her out like the cancer she is." Marin collapsed, silver light flickering and dying. Through their bond, Damian felt her consciousness fading, felt her giving up, not because she lacked strength, but because she was tired. So tired of fighting, of trying to prove herself, of being seen as a monster no matter what she did. "No," Damian whispered, then louder. "No!" His wolf surged forward with primal fury, shattering Valon's binding through sheer force of will. The mate bond blazed between him and Marin, and he reached for it, not to take her strength, but to give her his. Everything he was, everything he had, every ounce of love and faith and absolute certainty that she deserved to live. "Don't you dare give up," he sent through the wand. "Don't you dare let them win. Not after everything we've survived. Fight, Marin. Fight." Her eyes opened, still glowing, still silver. But now, with something else. Determination rekindled by his refusal to let her go. She reached for the moon power she'd been holding back, the full force of what she'd become at the temple. And this time, she didn't restrain it. The great hall exploded with silver light as the true moon wolf emerged. The transformation tore through the great hall like a thunderclap. Marin's human form dissolved into pure silver light, and from it emerged the moon wolf, massive, otherworldly, eyes blazing with the power of the First Mother herself. Her howl shattered every window in the hall, and the sound carried a weight that transcended the physical. It was a summons, a command, an invocation. The air itself split open. 3 forms materialized in the center of the hall, the moon spirits from the temple, but here, in the heart of Pact territory, their presence was overwhelming. Ancient power rolled off them in waves that made even the strongest wolves whimper and drop to their knees. Damian felt the pressure forcing him down, felt his wolf submit to something far older and more primal than any alpha authority. Everyone in the hall was on their knees. Everyone except Marin, still in moon wolf form, standing as an equal to the spirits. "Enough," the first spirit's voice resonated through bone and soul. "We have watched in silence for too long. Watched our moon-marked children hunted, enslaved, murdered across generations. Watched corruption take root in those who should have protected them. This is pack business." Valon tried to speak, still struggling against the pressure forcing him down. "Silence!" The second spirit's command was absolute. Valon's mouth snapped shut, literally unable to make sound. "You will listen. You will hear. and you will answer for what you have done." The third spirit moved to stand beside Marin, placing a translucent hand on the moon wolf's silver fur. This child was born with a gift meant to heal, to transform, to bridge the spaces between what is and what could be. Your council recognized her nature and corrupted it. 7 months of torture to create a battery for their ambitions. But the council did not act alone. The spirits turned as one to face Valon, and Damian felt something cold settle in his stomach as pieces clicked into place. "Show them," the first spirit commanded. The air shimmered, and suddenly everyone could see, not memories like Marin had shared, but truth laid bare by divine authority. Valon in secret meetings with the council, Valon signing orders to capture moon-marked children, Valon himself drawing curse matrices on victims too young to fight back. But worse than that, he wasn't just enabling the council. Kian's voice was horrified as he watched the visions unfold. He was siphoning the power they harvested. Look at the magical signatures. He's been strengthening himself with stolen moon magic for years. The visions continued, showing Valon's plan in its entirety. He had orchestrated everything, identified Marin as unusually powerful, ensured she was captured, helped the council bind her, and positioned himself to harvest the transformed energy they extracted. When Damian had freed her, Valon had pivoted, used the chaos to position himself as righteous opposition, planning to eliminate both Damian and Marin once he consolidated power. "My own nephew was an acceptable sacrifice." Valon's voice was forced from him by the spirit's magic, making him speak truth he'd never have admitted. He was always too soft, too principled. He would have discovered the program eventually. Better to remove him while blaming the moon-marked creature. Damian felt the words like physical blows. His uncle, the wolf who'd trained him, mentored him, shaped him into the head of security, had been planning his death for months. The crowd's reaction was visceral. Horror, rage, betrayal on a scale that shook the foundations of pack loyalty. Valon hadn't just committed crimes, he'd corrupted the very bonds that held them together as a people. For 300 years, we have watched moon-marked wolves be murdered, enslaved, and corrupted. The second spirit's voice carried infinite sorrow. 300 years since Queen Lyra and King Aldrich fell, and their vision of unity was twisted into this nightmare. No more. The spirits turned to Marin, who shifted back into human form, naked and glowing with residual power. Belle quickly threw a cloak around her shoulders, but Marin barely seemed to notice. Her silver eyes were locked on the spirits with something like understanding. "We name you Queen of the Moon." All three spirits spoke in unison, and the title resonated with weight that made the hall's foundations tremble. Not ruler of these wolves, but guardian of all moon-marked children across this land and beyond. Your task is clear. The first spirit gestured, and a map materialized in silver light, showing the entire kingdom and beyond, with dozens of points glowing like stars. They are scattered, hidden, afraid, some imprisoned like you were, some living in terror of discovery, some so young they don't yet understand what they are. "Gather them," the second spirit commanded. "Build a sanctuary where moon-marked wolves can live without fear of exploitation, where their gifts can flourish instead of being caged, where the next generation will never suffer as you suffered." "How?" Marin's voice was small, overwhelmed. "I'm just one person. I barely survived myself. How am I supposed to protect all of them?" "You are not alone," the third spirit said, and gestured to Damian. "You have your mate, the wolf who chose you over duty, who shattered every chain that bound you. His strength is yours." "You have allies," the first spirit continued, indicating Belle, Kian, and Ronan. "Those who stood with you when standing meant death. And you have us." All three spirits spoke together. "We cannot walk in this world as we once did, but our power flows through you now. You are moon-marked and spirit-touched, Queen of the Moon and bridge between worlds. You will face opposition, hatred, fear from those who cannot understand, but you will also find moon-marked children who need you, who will follow you, who will help build something new from the ashes of what was broken." Marin looked at Damian, and through their bond, he felt her terror and determination warring. "This is bigger than us, bigger than revenge on the council or justice for what they did to me." "Yes," he said simply, "but we do it anyway, because no one else will." She nodded slowly, then turned back to the spirits. "I accept. I'll be their Queen of the Moon. I'll build them a sanctuary. I'll protect every moon-marked child I can find." Her voice strengthened with each word, silver light pulsing in time with her heartbeat. "And anyone who tries to use them as the council used me, they'll answer to me." The spirit smiled, and it was terrible and beautiful. "So be it witnessed. So be it bound." They vanished, but their power remained. A corona of silver light that settled around Marin like a crown that couldn't be seen, but could be felt by every supernatural being in the hall. In the silence that followed, Marin turned to face the pack. No longer a prisoner seeking mercy, no longer a victim proving her worth. She stood as what the spirits had named her, Queen of the Moon, Guardian of the Moon-marked, and a force that would reshape their world whether they wanted it or not. "Valon will face pack justice for his criminal," she said, her voice carrying absolute authority. "The council members will be judged, and any wolf who participated in hunting, enslaving, or harming moon-marked children will answer for it." Her gaze swept across the crowd, and several wolves flinched. "But this isn't about revenge. It's about ensuring this never happens again." She stepped down from the raised platform, and wolves parted before her instinctively. When she reached Damian, she extended her hand. "Will you help me build this sanctuary? Knowing it means leaving behind everything you've known, your position, your pack, maybe even your family." Damian looked at his uncle, restrained now by Belle's magic, face twisted with impotent rage, looked at the crowd of wolves who'd cheered for Marin's defeat, who'd believed Valon's lies because they were comfortable, looked at the bound council members, and thought about all the moon-marked children still suffering in hidden cells across the kingdom. Then he looked at Marin, scarred, powerful, determined to save others from the fate she'd barely survived, and knew there was only one answer he could give. He took her hand, and the mate bond blazed between them like a promise. "Always," he said, "we build it together." The Queen of the Moon and her mate stood before the pack that had rejected them, and in that moment, neither needed acceptance or approval. They had each other. They had a purpose. And they had the Yarur, Moon Spirit's blessing. Everything else, they would build from there. The Great Hall remained silent after the spirits departed, every wolf still processing what they'd witnessed. Marin stood in the center of that silence, wrapped in Belle's cloak, silver light still pulsing faintly beneath her skin. She looked small, fragile, even, but the power radiating from her made it impossible to see her as weak. "I know you're afraid of me," she said finally, addressing the crowd with quiet honesty. "I know everything you've been taught says moon-marked wolves are dangerous, unpredictable, better kept controlled or eliminated. And I understand that fear. I was afraid of myself for years. That's why I locked away my power, why I let them cage me." She walked slowly through the crowd, and wolves shifted nervously as she passed. "But fear kept me weak, made me vulnerable to those who'd exploit that weakness. And your fear, all of your fear, created the conditions that let the council torture moon-marked children for generations. Fear doesn't protect anyone. It just gives power to those willing to exploit it." "So, what do you want from us?" someone called from the back. A mother wolf, Damian recognized, with young pups at home. "Nothing," Marina said simply. "I'm not here to demand your acceptance or beg for your approval. The moon spirits named me Queen of the Moon, but that's not a title that gives me authority over you. It gives me responsibility for every moon-marked child who needs sanctuary. And I will fulfill that responsibility whether you accept it or not." She stopped in the center of the hall, silver eyes sweeping across hundreds of faces. "I'm offering you a choice. You can resist, fight me, fear me, try to maintain the old ways where moon-marked children are prey. Or you can accept that change is coming, that this sanctuary will be built. These children will be protected, and nothing you do will stop it." "What if we choose to resist?" Stellan, still nursing his injuries from being thrown across the hall, spoke with more caution now, but no less hostility. "Then you resist," Marin said calmly, "and I'll build the sanctuary anyway. I'll heal those who are sick, protect those who are vulnerable, teach moon-marked children how to control their gifts instead of fearing them. I'll do all of it despite your resistance, because it's the right thing to do. Because no child should suffer what I suffered just because people are afraid of what they don't understand." The silence stretched, heavy with decision. Then Belle limped forward, her healing magic nearly depleted, but her resolve unshaken. She knelt before Marin, not in submission, but in respect. "I'll help you build it," she said clearly. Kian followed, kneeling despite his injuries. "As will I." "And I," Ronan's voice carried from where he stood guard over the bound council members. One by one, wolves began to kneel. Not all of them, maybe not even half, but enough. Enough to show that the tide was turning, that fear wasn't the only option. Damian knelt last, mate bond blazing between them as he looked up at the woman who'd gone from tortured prisoner to Queen of the Moon in a matter of weeks. She smiled down at him, and he saw in her eyes all the painful transformations still to come, all the battles they'd fight, all the moon-marked children they'd save together. Valon was exiled under armed guard, his dark magic bound, sent to the outer territories with orders never to return on pain of death. He went silently, but the hatred in his eyes promised this wasn't over. The council faced public trial over 3 grueling days. Evidence was presented, not just Marin's memories, but documentation Bell and Kian had uncovered, testimony from guards who had participated unwillingly, magical residue that proved the harvesting had been systematic. 4 were executed. 1 was exiled. The last, the youngest, was imprisoned for life with the possibility of redemption if she spent her remaining years working to locate and free other vessels. 6 months later, Damian stood at the edge of the Temple of the First Moon and watched the sun rise over what they'd built. The ancient ruins had been restored and expanded, not into a fortress, but a sanctuary with gardens and training grounds and healing chambers. 3 young moon-marked wolves trained in the courtyard below, learning to control their gifts under Marin's patient guidance instead of having their power ripped away and weaponized. More were coming. Word had spread across territories, whispered in hidden communities, passed along by sympathetic healers, carried on the moon's own light. Moon-marked wolves who'd lived in fear their entire lives, finally learning there was a place where they could be themselves, without terror. "Hard to believe it's only been 6 months, Marin said, appearing beside him. She'd filled out, regained the weight she'd lost during captivity, but the silver light still pulsed beneath her skin. A constant reminder of what she was, what she'd become. "Feels like longer," Damian admitted, pulling her close. Through the mate bond, he felt her exhaustion and determination in equal measure. Building this sanctuary had been brutal. Opposition from traditional wolves, logistical nightmares, moon-marked children arriving traumatized and barely functional. "Any regrets?" "Every day," she said honestly, "but I'd make the same choices all over again." Below, one of the young wolves, a girl barely 13, successfully transformed into moonwolf form for the first time. Her triumphant howl echoed across the valley, and Marin smiled with genuine joy. "They deserve this," she said quietly. "A place where transformation isn't punishment, where power isn't something to fear or lock away, where they can just be." "You're building it for them," Damian said, "even when it's hard. Even when people resist, even when you are tired enough to collapse, you're doing it anyway." "We're doing it," she corrected, meeting his eyes. "I couldn't do this without you, without Bell, Kian, Ronan, without everyone who chose to believe change was possible." A messenger wolf appeared at the sanctuary gates, bearing news of 2 more moon-marked children discovered in the southern territories, requesting sanctuary. Marin sighed, but straightened, silver light pulsing with renewed purpose. "No rest for the Queen of the Moon." "Never," Damian agreed, "but you don't rest alone." They walked together down to meet the messenger, mates bound by choice and destiny, building a new world one rescued child at a time. The transformation was painful, for them, for the pack, for the kingdom struggling to adapt, but it was necessary, and slowly, impossibly, it was working. The moon rose over the sanctuary, and beneath its light, moon-marked children slept peacefully for the first time in their lives, protected, safe, free to become what they were always meant to be, and the Queen of the Moon stood watch, ensuring that the nightmares of the past would never touch them again.